The tradition started when I was 16 and Mom broke her wrist 2 days before Thanksgiving. Sarah can handle it, she announced from her recliner, her arm wrapped in a stiff white cast, prescription painkillers making her voice slow and heavy. She's been helping me cook for years. Helping meant peeling potatoes at the counter, rinsing cranberries, laying out napkins, and polishing silverware, while she directed from the stove. It didn't mean orchestrating a full holiday feast for 23 relatives, with no warning, no written recipes, and no real guidance beyond vague instructions shouted from the living room. I remember standing in the kitchen that first night, staring at the turkey like it was a final exam I hadn't studied for. But somehow I managed it. I stayed up until 3 a.m. the night before Thanksgiving, tears slipping down my face as I scraped a ruined batch of rolls into the trash and tried again. I burned the first pie crust, under-seasoned the green beans, and nearly forgot the cranberry sauce. Still, the next afternoon I served a meal that was edible, if not elegant, placing platters on the table with trembling hands and a forced smile. "Sarah did such a wonderful job," everyone praised. "You're so lucky to have such a capable daughter." Mom glowed under the compliments as though she had personally supervised every step. Dad nodded with quiet pride from his seat at the head of the table. "Next year, we'll let Sarah handle everything. She's clearly got a gift for this." I was bone-tired, anxious, and had barely sat down the entire day. I had missed the jokes, the stories, the laughter that drifted in from the living room while I basted and stirred and checked timers. But the approval felt warm. Being useful felt reassuring. Being needed felt like love, even if it came wrapped in exhaustion. That was 18 years ago. Every Thanksgiving since, I've been the official chef for our ever-expanding family celebration. What began as emergency assistance quietly hardened into a permanent assignment. The guest list stretched from 23 to well over 30 as cousins married, babies were born, and distant relatives decided our house was the place to be. My role never shifted. I was to single-handedly produce a restaurant-level holiday spread while everyone else relaxed and enjoyed themselves. Over time, Sarah's Thanksgiving became almost a brand within the family. Relatives would gush about Sarah's legendary stuffing and Sarah's flawless gravy as if they were items on a menu. They made special requests weeks in advance and expected accommodations for every allergy, preference, and diet. Some even brought friends who had heard about the famous meal and wanted to experience it themselves. With every passing year, the pressure to maintain that reputation tightened around me. No one truly offered assistance. They performed polite gestures. "Let me know if you need anything." But the moment I actually asked for help, they were suddenly busy refilling drinks or entertaining kids in the yard. They'd drift into the kitchen to sample a spoonful of sauce or comment on the aroma, offering suggestions I didn't ask for, then vanish when I handed them a knife and pointed to a cutting board. "We don't want to get in your way," they'd say lightly. "You're so good at this, we'd just ruin it." The excuse became a script, repeated every year. Meanwhile, the logistics alone could have qualified as a part-time job. Grocery shopping for 30-plus people required multiple trips, color-coded lists, and strict budgeting. Preparation began days ahead of time. I baked desserts that could be stored, chopped vegetables in bulk, prepped casseroles, and mapped out a cooking schedule that balanced oven space with stovetop burners like a military operation. Thanksgiving Day itself turned into a 12-hour endurance test. From early morning until late evening, I moved constantly, calculating timing, checking temperatures, plating dishes, and refilling serving trays, while the rest of the family watched football, laughed over board games, played with toddlers, or relaxed with glasses of wine. I was anchored to the kitchen floor. Conversations floated past me in fragments. I missed the touchdowns everyone cheered for. I missed the spontaneous family photos. By the time I finally fixed a plate for myself, most people were already done eating. I usually stood at the counter, taking hurried bites between washing dishes and packing leftovers. Long after the house emptied, I'd still be scrubbing pans while everyone else dozed contentedly in front of the television. The criticism hurt more than the exhaustion. It was always framed as helpful feedback. The turkey was slightly dry last year. Maybe try brining it longer. Could you tone down the salt in the stuffing this time? Aunt Marie's rolls had a softer texture, but yours are fine. Fine? They spoke to me the way someone might address a catering company they'd hired, not a daughter and cousin who was giving up her entire holiday. By my mid-20s, the physical toll was undeniable. Cooking at that scale required stamina, focus, and relentless attention to detail. I'd collapse into bed each Thanksgiving night with aching feet, sore shoulders, and a bitterness I tried to swallow. Everyone else talked about what a relaxing, joyful day it had been. Friends would invite me to join their celebrations. Come over, they'd say. Our family does potluck. Everyone brings something small. I always declined. I can't. I'm cooking for my family. They'd frown in confusion. Can't someone else take over? Or can't you all share the work? The idea felt almost forbidden. In my family, Thanksgiving belonged to me. Whenever I hinted at making changes, the reaction was immediate and dramatic. But it won't feel the same. You're the best at it. It's tradition. The only tradition that seemed sacred was the one where I worked nonstop while everyone else rested. My personal tradition of wanting to sit down and enjoy a holiday didn't count. College gave me a brief, acceptable excuse to step back. Distance and exams provided cover for missing a few Thanksgivings. Yet even then, the phone calls came. Relatives asking for my recipes, complaining that the stuffing didn't taste right without me there, saying Thanksgiving just wasn't special anymore. The guilt settled heavy on my chest. I was made to feel selfish for prioritizing my education as if earning a degree were a betrayal of family duty. Once I graduated, the temporary break ended. I was immediately reinstated as the full-time holiday chef, only now with added expectations. You learned so much in college, this should be even easier for you now. It didn't matter that I had a demanding job. It didn't matter that I had friendships and relationships I wanted to nurture. It didn't matter that just once I wanted to sit at the table from start to finish and feel like a guest in my own family. My career didn't matter, my relationships didn't matter, my own desire to enjoy a holiday didn't matter. What mattered was providing them with the perfect Thanksgiving experience they'd grown accustomed to. The breaking point built slowly over several years. Each Thanksgiving became more demanding as family members treated me less like a relative and more like a personal chef. They'd make special requests, dietary demands, and last-minute changes without considering the extra work involved. 3 years ago, my cousin brought her new boyfriend, who was extremely picky about food. She handed me a list of his dislikes and allergies, expecting me to accommodate a complete stranger's preferences. When I suggested he could bring his own food or eat what he could from the available options, she was appalled. "Sarah, don't be difficult. It's Thanksgiving. Can't you just make sure there's something he can eat?" 2 years ago, my brother's wife decided to go gluten-free and expected me to prepare separate versions of every dish. When I explained that would double my workload, she accused me of being unsupportive of her health journey. Last year was the final straw. Dad handed me a list of 32 people 3 days before Thanksgiving. 8 more than I'd planned for. "Some folks are bringing friends," he explained casually. "I told them you wouldn't mind." I stood in my kitchen, staring at that list, calculating the additional groceries, prep time, and stress. I'd have to redo all my planning, buy more food, and somehow accommodate 8 extra people with the same oven space and cooking schedule. "I do mind," I said quietly. "What?" "I mind. I can't cook for 32 people with 3 days' notice." Dad looked genuinely confused. "Sarah, you've always handled whatever we've thrown at you. What's different now?" What was different was that I was 34 years old and had spent 18 Thanksgivings working while everyone else celebrated. What was different was that I'd never had a relaxing holiday with my own family. What was different was that I was exhausted from being taken for granted. "I need help," I said. "Real help, not people standing around offering to do anything while contributing nothing." Well, you know how it is. Everyone has their own traditions and ways of doing things. It's easier if you just handle it. Easier for whom? Certainly not for me. That Thanksgiving was a disaster. I was overwhelmed, stressed, and resentful. The food was fine, but I snapped at people all day. I cried in the pantry while the turkey rested. I served dinner with red eyes and a fake smile, then locked myself in my room afterward. Multiple family members commented on my attitude problem and suggested I was getting too stressed about cooking. The solution, according to them, was for me to handle stress better. In January, I started therapy. I needed help processing why I felt so angry and trapped by something I'd supposedly chosen to do. My therapist asked probing questions that revealed uncomfortable truths. Do you enjoy cooking for your family? I used to, years ago, when it was occasional help rather than mandatory labor. Now it felt like an obligation I couldn't escape. What would happen if you said no? They'd be disappointed, angry, and probably guilt me into compliance. Thanksgiving would be ruined, and it would be my fault. What if Thanksgiving was ruined? What would actually happen? People would have to figure out their own meal plans. They'd adapt. Life would continue. What do you want your Thanksgivings to look like? I wanted to enjoy the holiday. I wanted to spend time with family instead of working for them. I wanted to feel like a guest in my own life sometimes. My therapist helped me understand that I'd become trapped in a pattern of people-pleasing that had evolved into exploitation. My family had become accustomed to my sacrifice and now saw it as my natural role rather than a generous gift. We practiced setting boundaries and handling guilt trips. I learned to recognize the difference between helping family and being taken advantage of by family. I developed strategies for maintaining relationships while protecting my own needs. By October, I decided this would be my last Thanksgiving as sole chef. I would cook one final meal, announce my retirement from kitchen duty, and suggest alternatives for future years. But as Thanksgiving approached, the familiar pressure mounted. Dad presented the guest list, 30 people this year, with his usual assumption that I'd handle everything. Mom chimed in with special requests and dietary restrictions. Relatives called with their traditional demands for favorite dishes. The expectation was so absolute, so unquestioned, that I found myself falling back into old patterns. I started planning menus and making shopping lists despite my resolution to quit. The momentum of 18 years was hard to break. 3 days before Thanksgiving, I had an epiphany while standing in the grocery store. I was buying ingredients for a meal I didn't want to cook for people who wouldn't appreciate the work involved during a holiday I should be enjoying instead of enduring. I abandoned my cart and went home. That evening, I called my best friend from college. Are you doing anything for Thanksgiving? Flying to Portland to visit my sister. Why? Can I come with you? She was surprised, but delighted. Of course. But what about your family's big dinner? Aren't you cooking for like 50 people? 30? And no, I'm not cooking for anyone this year. Booking a last-minute flight was expensive, but it felt like buying my freedom. I packed quickly, left my kitchen empty, and prepared for the confrontation that would inevitably come. Wednesday evening, Dad called with final details. Cooking starts at 4 a.m., right? Uncle Bob's bringing his new girlfriend, and she's vegetarian, so make sure there are plenty of options for her. Oh, and Cousin Jennifer's kids are all going through picky phases, so maybe some plain pasta as backup. Actually, Dad, I won't be cooking tomorrow. Long pause. What do you mean? I mean, I'm not cooking Thanksgiving dinner. I'm going out of town. Sarah, this isn't funny. 30 people are expecting dinner. Then 30 people need to figure out alternative arrangements. You can't just abandon the family. It's Thanksgiving. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm taking a break from being the unpaid caterer. The conversation escalated quickly. Dad was angry, then panicked, then furious again. He cycled through guilt trips, accusations, and desperate pleas. How could I be so selfish? Didn't I care about family? What were they supposed to do now? I stayed calm, just like my therapist had taught me. You could order catering, you could make it potluck, you could go to a restaurant, you could ask someone else to host. Families across America manage Thanksgiving without having one person do all the work. But you're so good at it, and everyone's counting on you. Everyone's counting on me to sacrifice my holiday for their convenience. That's not fair, and I'm done with it. I hung up before he could respond. My phone immediately started buzzing with calls and texts from other family members who'd been alerted to the crisis. I turned it off. Thursday morning at 3 a.m., instead of starting turkey prep, I was in an Uber heading to the airport. Instead of calculating cooking times and oven schedules, I was buying coffee and settling into my window seat. Instead of sacrificing another holiday to other people's expectations, I was finally putting myself first. The guilt was intense during takeoff. 18 years of conditioning doesn't disappear overnight. I imagine the chaos back home as 30 people arrived expecting a feast and found empty kitchen. Part of me wanted to turn around and fix the situation I'd created, but a bigger part of me felt free for the first time in decades. Portland was beautiful. My friend's sister had a small gathering, just 8 people, where everyone contributed something. I brought wine and helped with cleanup. Afterward, we played board games, took walks, and actually enjoyed each other's company instead of just consuming food someone else had prepared. It was the most relaxing Thanksgiving I'd had since I was 15. My phone, when I finally turned it back on Friday, contained 47 messages. They ranged from angry to hurt to desperate to manipulative. The story I pieced together was predictably chaotic. The family had gathered Thursday, expecting their usual feast. When they realized I wasn't there and no food was prepared, panic ensued. Some people left to find restaurants, most were closed. Others raided my parents' pantry for whatever they could find. A few relatives went to grocery stores and bought pre-made dishes. They ended up with a hodgepodge meal of store-bought turkey, instant mashing potatoes, canned vegetables, and frozen pies. It was, according to multiple messages, a disaster and the worst Thanksgiving ever. Several family members blamed me for ruining the holiday. Others were hurt that I'd left without warning. A few were angry that I'd abandoned family during a time when we're supposed to be together. But buried among the guilt trips and accusations were a few messages that gave me hope. My cousin Mark: "I never realized how much work you put into Thanksgiving. I'm sorry we took you for granted." My Aunt Linda: "I understand why you needed a break. We should have helped more over the years." My brother: "Mom and Dad are furious, but honestly, I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself." The most telling response came from my teenage niece. It was actually kind of fun figuring out dinner together, like a cooking adventure, but Uncle Dave burned the rolls and Grandpa complained the whole time. Over the following weeks, family dynamics slowly shifted. Some relatives remained angry and refused to speak to me. They couldn't forgive me for disrupting their comfortable arrangement. These were people who had valued me only as a service provider, and without that service, they had no use for me. Others began to understand what they'd been asking of me all those years. They reached out with apologies and invitations to smaller, more manageable gatherings where cooking duties were shared. My parents took the longest to come around. They felt embarrassed by the Thanksgiving disaster and blamed me for making them look bad in front of relatives. It took several honest conversations before they could see the situation from my perspective. "We never asked you to cook for everyone," Mom protested during one particularly difficult phone call. "You didn't have to ask. You expected it, and I delivered for 18 years. But you seem to enjoy it." I enjoyed feeling useful and appreciated. I didn't enjoy sacrificing every Thanksgiving while everyone else relaxed. "We didn't know you felt that way." This was the hardest part to accept, that they genuinely hadn't considered my experience. In their minds, I was fulfilling my natural role as the family caretaker. They'd never questioned whether that role was fair or sustainable because it worked for them. Eventually, we found a new equilibrium. Thanksgiving became a potluck where everyone contributed according to their abilities. Some people brought appetizers, others handled sides, a few managed desserts. The host, rotating annually, provided the turkey and coordination. The meals weren't as elaborate or perfectly coordinated as my solo productions, but they were more enjoyable because everyone participated. People appreciated the food more when they understood the work involved. Children learned to help instead of just consuming. Most importantly, I got to be a family member instead of kitchen staff. I could sit with relatives, watch football, play with kids, and actually enjoy the holiday I'd been working through for nearly 2 decades. 3 years later, our family Thanksgivings are smaller but warmer. Some relatives stopped attending when they couldn't get their perfect free meal, but the people who remained genuinely wanted to spend time together. We focus more on connection and less on consumption. I still cook, but as one contributor among many rather than sole provider. I make dishes I enjoy preparing and eat meals that are still warm. I have conversations during dinner instead of serving it. I participate in my own holiday. The Portland trip became an annual tradition. My friend and I alternate between visiting her family and exploring new cities during Thanksgiving week. It's my reminder that holidays can be about joy and discovery, rather than obligation and exhaustion. My family now understands that my presence at their gatherings is a choice, not a given. That makes the time we spend together more meaningful because it's based on mutual enjoyment rather than one-sided service. Looking back, I realized that my Thanksgiving rebellion wasn't about abandoning family. It was about saving it. The old system was unsustainable and unfair. By refusing to continue enabling it, I forced everyone to find a better way. The people who truly cared about me adapted and apologized. The people who only valued my labor revealed their true priorities by cutting contact. Either way, I learned who my real family was. Today, I'm grateful for many things on Thanksgiving. The family members who love me as a person, not a service provider. The confidence to set boundaries even when it's difficult. The freedom to enjoy holidays instead of enduring them. And the knowledge that choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is refuse to let them take advantage of you. It forces everyone to grow into healthier patterns and more authentic relationships. My kitchen is no longer a prison, and Thanksgiving is no longer a source of dread. That's worth more than any perfectly prepared feast.